Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Be right back.
Q9, my food time, hold it up and smoke it. Transgression, a progression of a war we ain't asked for. Transgression, a progression of a war we ain't asked for.
It's madness, yo. All the things that we could talk about.
Call it.
But let's talk about these urban circumstances real quick.
And basically, it's
we got this.
So,
Revolutionary.
Frosty hand. Muhammad is the fame's name, forever stand.
Standing on royal fusing of justice for the few, ridiculed by the pale terrorists bent on genocidal obsession, rooted in fear of neglection and abandonment, fueled by nightmares of ancestors' jealousy.
Because at the end of the day, I still want to be able to I don't dislike George Washington.
The kind of friends I think all friends should be like my friends. My friends are the kind of friends I think everyone needs. My friends see the things at times I don't see. My friends hate the police.
What has changed?
Are deemed the criminals, and the blacks are deemed the criminals.
shut up and help.
Reflection ain't nothing but the inner child trying to see you. You gonna look? You gonna pick up that book?
Lord, keep me far from the faith. Guide me through night and day. Teach me your ways. Show me the righteous way to sway. Lord, can you teach me, please? Show me the way, I'd say.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Urban Conservative. This morning, we will be talking about Behind the Shield, Unveiled, the high-stakes battle against police corruption. I know that's something that, people don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the blue wall of silence, the blue line of silence, the blue wall, whatever we want to call it. But it is something that we definitely need to talk about, and we need to discuss, for the simple fact that, we sit there and we say we don't want no bad police on the streets, right? But why don't we sit there and protect the ones that come out and say things? You know what I mean? There's been numerous stories that have came out. We've had numerous DOJ investigations, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing that we're going to get into is the Baltimore Police Department. And, I want people to really, really to think about a lot of things, because reporting the misconduct of another police officer should be a no-brainer. At first examination, it's the right thing to do, but if you're in a dysfunctional organization, the real-world consequences of doing so may be grave. We've seen numerous situations where we've had, cops come out and report their other officers for bad conduct. And do we ever see anything change from that? And that's what I want to talk about today, because, since George Floyd, since May 25th, 2020, we've had a movement of defund the police. We've had a movement of abolish the police. And what does that look like? I know when I was a part of a group it was called CPAC, and Community Policing Accountability Committee. And basically what CPAC is about, and because it's still here, CPAC is about abolishing and defunding. But it goes into, it's not really so much about getting rid of police, it's reimagining police, getting rid of policing as we know it right now. Policing has changed. Our police officers deal more with mental health than anything else. And that's not something that police are trained to deal with, and that's one thing that I've had some great conversations with, ex-officers and even current ones. And the adrenaline of going from, let's say, a shooting to a domestic to a person in crisis can be a lot. And I feel like, these officers, especially in Minneapolis, were paid a lot for PTSD. We had so many PTSD claims that I feel like that should be a major part of policing is mental health, because mental health is real, regardless. If people want to, I know a lot of people, look at it, be like, oh, Kanye West is mentally ill, Britney Spears, and so many other people. It's when you come out and you're speaking your story, your truth, your glory. People want to talk about its mental illness, it's this, it's that, and honestly, it's none of that. It's just people getting out their emotions, their true feelings, and people will bash you and call you names for that, for speaking the truth. They'll make it seem like the person that's telling the truth is the one that's crazy, and at the end of the day, they're really not. So this is the video that I'm about to play is a video. It's a documentary called I Got a Monster. It's about the rise and fall of America's most corrupt police squad. And if people don't know this story, he's going to get into it a little bit. It's about Baltimore, Maryland. And there was a whole precinct where 30 of the 34 officers in that department were charged, and some took plea deals, some were convicted. But I want to get into it because of the simple fact of, I think it really spotlights what goes on in American policing, and something that people are scared to talk about. So let's get into it.
And maybe I understand you actually listened to a few episodes, so I think you know how we get started here. Maybe you can tell our listeners what is a
documentary that focuses on the victims of the Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force, which was an elite police unit that got convicted of egregious examples of corruption, and are now doing a combined total of over 100 years of time for their acts. So we met all the victims and sort of deconstructed what led to the fall of the task force, and hopefully a little bit of the justice for the people involved on the other side.
Well, indeed. And I mean, if there's a lot of people involved in this, but there was this fella named Wayne Jenkins, who's
Yes.
the ringleader.
Completely.
Yes, who terrorized Baltimore for many years. But he's forgive me, I must say, you approach yet another doc about corrupt cops or these sort of issues, but he takes the cake, doesn't he? He's quite it's quite amazing what he pulled off or tried to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, the guy from the outside is an incredibly charismatic, effective alpha dog of a police officer. Lifting up the hood, you see a completely different personality that was able to accomplish all those things with a lot of deception, really bad moral decision making, and really abusing a system that he saw the holes in to benefit himself and the people around him. They did a fictional version of the show with David Simon, and he was played by John Bernthal, who's an unbelievably charismatic actor. Right. And I think in that casting, you get a sense of what type of personality Wayne Jenkins is, and how using that charisma and what he was able to do was, I mean, incredibly adept at taking advantage of the opportunities he's had.
But he didn't do it alone.
No, nobody does.
Nobody does. So, it's this gun trace task force that he ended up. But I mean, how did this happen? Because they, all the people, as your film points out, they all had noted multiple internal affairs investigations going on. It was like a perfect storm. Like if someone went out of their way, I think you even say one of the people in the film says, if you were conspiratorial at all, you would wonder about how did all these guys end up on the same team.
And we did, and we explored it. And basically the thesis we came up with is that they all shared a common habit of being aggressive cops, right? That was something they were known for. If you got put on a unit, it was somebody who was basically an all-star of some sort. They were aggressive. They were willing to go out, put themselves on the front line, throw themselves into dangerous situations to make the arrest, to get the drugs, to get the weapons, all the stuff that Baltimore has been really historically worried about as far as stuff that is dangerous in their city. So when they amassed, it was just this really bizarre amalgamation. We always said it was like, a superhero movie where the crew finally comes together. And in this case, all the crew are these corrupt cops. And you just can't imagine that people would be able to be moving in this way. But that's part of what the story in the film discusses, is that the system that allows the protection of cops with these types of records and how it favors protecting them over the transparency needed to really have a system of integrity that accounts for their bad behavior and is able to show patterns of this bad behavior over time so accountability can happen in the correct way.
Now,
do you think
want people to hear and listen to what he's saying, because the system is designed for no transparency or accountability when it comes to officers. And that's why we literally have to do the things that we feel like we have to do. We're protesting and shutting down highways about injustice, and just speaking about it, I think is something that we really need to do. But I think people really need to fully understand and listen to people when they speak. Because if you're not, people need to go listen to Abel and Baker podcast. That is two former police officers that have a podcast. And they talk about their experiences being Minneapolis police officers and what they've had to go through. And I don't want people to just take it in because of, I know policing in 2023 is a lot to do with politics. And I wish it didn't. It's the same way with education. It's the same way. Bless up, bless up. It's the same way with healthcare. Everything is so political. Even when it comes to our judicial system, depending on your politics, is how you read the law. And that's not cool. You know what I'm saying? I sit there and I think about it. Democrats literally will lie, cheat, and steal to get justice, right? And this is what I want people to understand, because we can go back in history, and I'll definitely just talk about Minnesota, because Amy Klobuchar, Keith Ellison, who are Democrats, have literally wrongfully convict innocent Black youth. And yet we vote for these people. We allow them in the office, knowing the wrongs that they've done in our community, knowing the wrongs that they've done. It's just like what even Don Samuels, who's running up against Ilhan Omar in CD5. I could never vote for that man for the simple fact that he took another child without permission. They went on a bike ride by a river, let the kids get in the water, and one of the kids died. And he didn't even jump in because he can't swim. So if you can't swim, why are you taking children into a situation where you can't do nothing? That's not transparency. That's not truth. That's not accountability either. So I want people to think about that, and I'm going to let this play out another couple more minutes, and then I'm going to get into a heavy discussion.
Is this just a Baltimore story, or is it
Sadly not?
Yeah, it just happens to take place. I mean, I lived in Washington D.C. for a while. Went to Baltimore.
So
quite a few.
I mean, there's been stories there too. Recently, Memphis with the Scorpion Unit. There's been examples of them abusing their power. Unfortunately, it's one of the greater conversations that we're having in the United States in total, which is the lines of proper policing and how to have accountability and letting them do their job effectively, while at the same time maintaining the rights of the citizens, which obviously in this case got abused and violated greatly.
Yeah, and how do you? I mean, it's a subject of another doc, I think. But I mean, how do we keep finding ourselves in this situation?
Well, I think it's just very lazy politicking, to be quite honest. Institutional change of some nature has to happen for this type of behavior not to be ongoing. And we'll get these red flags. People will come in, they'll do assessments. You know, right now, Baltimore is under something called a consent decree, which is a federally mandated evaluation of what's going on in their police department. So people are coming in, they're assessing, they're pointing out the problems, but it's the follow-up and the follow-through that's never really addressed, and the staying power of actually finding a transition to a more effective way that accounts for all these discoveries. I mean, that's going to take fundamental, change from the bottom into an institution that's been around for hundreds of years.
Right.
Baltimore is this really weird litmus test where it always seems to be slightly ahead of what's going on crime-wise. So whenever I hear stories about that, I'm like, oh my God, that's going to ripple someplace else. And like I discussed earlier, you've seen stuff in Memphis. There was an egregious, terrible case of police corruption in Los Angeles with cops actually being accused of being part of underground gangs and going out and abusing people as part of their entry into these gangs. So this power dynamic is really dangerous, and nobody's actually doing the institutional change to alleviate it and to make it not happen anymore.
And I guess there's an element there for some of us.
We're going to leave off right there because I want to get into what he was talking about when it came to these police units, because Minneapolis has had its own, Akron, Ohio, Tango 22 had theirs, and I want to get into that because that's something that isn't talked about. And even in Los Angeles County right now, in California, there is the executioners. So these people, literally, these groups have names, just like there's another one, 3%ers, Oath Keepers. Come on in there. So I came to find out, as a lot of people may not know, that I went to Akron, Ohio for Jayland Walker. And so when we were digging into trying to find out the killers of Jayland Walker, we come to find out a lot more information. And there was members of a militia group within the Akron Police Department called Tango 22. All the information found is publicly available. And we cannot allow a white supremacist gang to patrol our streets. Fire these officers and release the names. And what we came up with with public information, by going by badge numbers and videos, and is that Todd Stump, Wallace Light, Phil Sr., and Nate Milstad are part of a gang inside the Akron Police Department called Tango 22. Now, we're not the Leon Block was not the first to even talk about this story. It actually was the Akron Beacon. And it really shocks me because you have all of these. And I will say this, because let me get the lady's name that I was talking to about this. I forget the reporter's name, but we were going back and forth, and Literally, we were, swapping information, and I even was talking to Margot Somerville, who was at that point was the city council president. And still, there's no change in Akron, Ohio, and they know that they have bad cops, but yet you have police chiefs, like I forget the buddy's name, Stephen Milet or whatever the hell his name is. But you have cops like that, or you have police chiefs, a black police chief like Arredondo, who will sit there and perjure himself on the stand, all in the name of white supremacy, to keep a white supremacy system alive. Tell me that's not crazy. But yet, police are allowed to lie. Are they allowed to lie on the stand? On the Bible, with their hand on the Bible? Talking about they swear to God to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help them God? Because at this point, this is why I have really no faith in the religion system, or even that the fact that these people really believe in God, for the simple fact y'all can literally lie on the stand with your hand on the Bible. That's not God. That's not godly. That's Satan. That's Satan at work. That ain't God. That ain't God. That's Satan. So y'all can't sit there and tell me that y'all are out here wanting to do the right thing when you can literally lie on the stand. You can lie on the stand. And this ain't, I want people to understand, this ain't got shit to do with Derek Chauvin. This ain't got shit to do with Derek Chauvin, because he is where he needs to be, right? Regardless if I believe that his knee killed George Floyd, he still had other victims before that his superiors and a council allowed him to do, because it was on body cam. And yet what he was doing was approved. It was approved, but then yet, hold on, because we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. And this is what's crazy is they allowed it. They allowed it, right? To see what you're looking at right now is the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the U.S. State's Attorney's Office, right? Because Minneapolis was hit with a consent decree, right? That should be rolling out really soon because they budgeted for it. We don't have the officers for it. Won't ever have the officers for it. But there's things that I want to get into about this. And the findings is really what I want to talk about, is because Department of Justice has reasonable cause to believe that the city of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Police Department engage in a pattern of practice of conduct that deprives people of their rights under the Constitution and federal law. MPD uses excessive force, including unjustified deadly force and other types of force. MPD unlawfully discriminates against Black and Native American people in its enforcement activities. MPD violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech. MPD in the city discriminate against people with behavioral health disabilities when responding to calls for assistance. We've also found persistent deficiencies in MPD's accountability systems, training, supervision, and officer wellness programs, which contribute to the violations of the Constitution and federal law. Now, why doesn't anybody, that's what I don't understand is, what consent decree has ever worked yet? Because from my understanding, any city entity that has done one, they're still in it, right? They're still in it. So let's see if there's, see, I don't think that's let me get back to see if I can get with the police. Because there's been, I know Chicago, we know that. We know that there's been plenty Memphis. We know Louisville, Newark, New Jersey. I know San Francisco. You know what makes me wonder though, and I want to show y'all something real quick, because of even why the consent decrees wasn't added, because it wasn't until 1994. But the use of consent decrees around policing originated in the 1994 crime bill, a law that fueled mass incarceration and expanded racial disparities in our legal system. Along its many punitive provisions, the law included a small handful of law enforcement accountability measures such as authorizing DOJ to conduct pattern or practice investigations into persuasive misconduct. Its inclusion was driven in part by the investigation of the independent commission into the beating of Rodney King by the Los Angeles Police Department officers, which found that the incident was a part of a broader pattern of department failure. How has the use of consent decrees changed over time? Consent decrees are intensely political because they hold police departments and jail systems accountable. Their use depends on who controls the White House, and by extension, the DOJ. The Obama administration filed 14 consent decrees, while Trump's administration took steps to limit their use, arguing the process hurt morale and led to violent crime. The Biden administration lifted these curbs shortly after taking office. Yeah, and it's insane of how we as people don't say anything. We just allow these police officers to keep on doing it, and we think that the government is going to come in here and save us. And the government's not going to save us. That's the sickest thing about all of this, is that the government's not going to save us. Why would they? Why would they help us? Why would they save us when at the end of the day, this is their doing? Because if they really wanted to have transparency and accountability, we would already have it, right? We would already have it. We would already have it. And that's what people what they don't understand, is that we would already have accountability. We would already have transparency. But because it's such a political conversation, we'll never see that, because it all depends on who we elect, who's in office. That's what it all depends on, is who's in office, who all, if they're Republican, if they're Democrat, what kind of Democrat are they? What type of progressive are they? Are they a liberal? It's crazy. So there's another video that I want to play, and it's with Liz Collins. I think this is a police officer's wife, and I think so hold on, this is a minute.
Second, in the end, that talk about this body camera footage. This is about an 18-minute interaction with George Floyd that day. It's 90 seconds in the end that the jury is allowed to see in trial.
In this episode, I sit down with Emmy Award-winning reporter Liz Collins, producer of the new narrative-busting documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis.
I went to the Minneapolis police website, where they've always had their manual online for years, and there are 2 pages that are mysteriously missing. So I knew that something more was at work here.
She happened the day George died, what the media left out, and what evidence was withheld at the trial.
To manipulate a story like this, to hide things from the public, it's really a testament to poor leadership. Nobody was willing to just stand up and speak the truth.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
I don't agree 100% with the way Liz did that, the fall of Minneapolis. They're trying to make Chauvin seem like some kind of hero, and at the end of the day, he's really not. He's not a hero at all. He was a coward, among other things. For me, the fall of Minneapolis was more eye-opening to the failures in the system, and the fact that if these people really wanted to change things, they could. But they beat around the bush. They beat around the bush for change, and that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? It's we go through this year after year after year after year. We talk about it year after year after year, and whatever changes. You know what I'm saying? Whatever changes, because people couldn't believe it until they saw it, and now people see it so much that it's just normal. It's like it's a part of everyday life, and it's not at all. It's not a part of everyday life. It's wrong. It's an injustice, and it's something that we need to change. It's something that we need to really have open and honest dialogue. And I think the people that are elected officials just need to come and sit and not give a response, but to just listen and come and see for themselves. Don't just be, talking for us, but you don't ever want to come down here. And that goes for wherever, if it's, Rochester, if it's St. Cloud, if it's Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Paul. We have way too many people that are just talkers and not walkers. But that's what we vote for. We don't actually want change, because if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And getting rid of homelessness, getting rid of gun violence, getting rid of police brutality, they don't make money off of that. So what do? It's all about money. It's about capitalism. There's so many things that are wrong with our system. And I know a lot of people are talking about the movie on Netflix by the Obamas, Leave the World Behind. And there was such a bigger message in that movie, because for me, it was literally telling people that, or even just showing that we don't even have time to pay attention to what's going on around us to even understand what's going on around us. And I think people miss that. You know what I'm saying? I think people miss that for the simple fact that if you look in the movie when the plane crashes and the guy's out there talking to the Spanish woman, who, well, I think she's Spanish, but you can see the lady on the beach and she's sitting in one of the plane chairs and she's sitting there following him, her eyes. So all that movie was doing was just preparing us for what's coming and telling people to start paying attention. Because if not, it could literally be your life. It could literally be your life. It could, because what are you going to do if the internet cuts out? If electricity cuts out? What are people going to do if you can't leave your city? You can't go to safety. What are you going to do? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have enough resources to survive for a while, a couple weeks? If they cut water, do you have enough bottled water? You know, that's shit that people really need to think about. And I know that sounds like some doomsday shit, but it's really not. So I want people to think about that. Well, I'm going to get off here for today. I'm not feeling too well. So y'all have a great Monday. I hope everybody enjoys it. I hope everybody gets out, does something productive. Win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell. Wish me well.
Every day, fighting for my life. Every day, fighting for my life. Fighting for my life. Bread grew from the seed you thought was rot. I think not. Fire bred desire to rise above denial, to rise from former ashes to face new